Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Dungeon Royale. Dungeon Royale is brought to you by Gatwick Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 6 and up, and games range anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes. In Dungeon Royale, the king is on his deathbed, and the only thing that can save him is the Stone of Life. However, the stone is located in the Dungeon of Gorgoth, which of course is protected by a dragon. Now you must adventure there, trying to find it and other artifacts in order to bring it back and claim the reward. Only one hero will claim this reward. Will it be you? So the objective here is to explore, steal, and attack in order to get the most points by gathering artifacts and treasures, and of course the Stone of Life. The Stone of Life is worth 10 points in the end. However, if you gather enough treasure and artifacts, you could still possibly win the game. But it really is all about getting the most points and getting out of the dungeon. So here's what a typical setup's gonna look like. Put the main board out, and yes, this game is very reminiscent, all the artwork, of the old school video games. Now, each player is going to receive a player board. This has your character stats, your health, and so forth. You're going to start at level 1, which is 3 health. You're going to receive 2 quest cards. Again, quest cards are going to give you more points at the end of the game, and you are after the most points here, so it's good to achieve your quests. And then you have Dungeon Royale cards. You're going to receive 5 of those. These cards are your gear, your treasure, your items, or weapons that you might be using against your fellow players. And you'll receive your 3 movement dice. Movement dice are going to be critical, dictating where you're moving within the dungeon, north, south, east, west, on each round. And then of course you have the different sets of cards. You'll shuffle those up and place them near the board, and you'll place all the artifacts out on the board in one of the 8 spots. Randomly place them out. And then the heroes, in turn order, after you roll the dice to figure out who goes first, will place their characters out in the 1 through 5 spots. And of course the dragon and the Stone of Life get placed in the middle in the dragon's lair. There's also several different types of attack dice that you'll be using throughout the game, as well as the dragon dice. You have your kill tokens, you have your death tokens, and finally the key tokens that will all get used throughout the game. Then you're ready to begin. Now, the overall game is broken down into 2 phases, and that second phase doesn't really kick in until one player reaches level 3. We'll talk about how that works in a minute. But first, let's take a look at the basics. You're going to be doing movement, and then you're going to be performing actions and things, or playing cards. So the first part is movement. What you're going to do is take your 3 movement dice, and you're going to secretly choose your path behind your player boards, north, south, east, west, or stay, and then everyone will reveal, and everyone will simultaneously move their characters, announcing where they'll be moving, and seeing how your paths may cross and who you may attack. Now, just a couple notes on movement here. So if you look at the board, there are what appear to be hazards. There's water and pits. Well, these are just flavor text on the board, just graphical things. They're not going to impede your effort moving through the dungeon. However, there are red walls. You will have to navigate around these. You cannot move through them. And the dragon lair in the middle here can't actually be accessed until you enter phase 2 of the game. You can also become dazed, which will cause your character to randomly move through the dungeon. And there's a scroll of foresight that allows you to pick your path after all the other players go. Then, after everyone completes their movement, the first player completes their turn by either attacking, stealing, doing special attacks, or using action cards. There's also artifacts that you could be picking up, or there are icons on the room to show which ones are viable for ransacking or getting treasure from. Now, a lot of what you're going to be doing in the game is attacking and possibly stealing. Again, this will all be dictated by what cards you have in your hand and available to use. However, attacks come in 2 flavors. You have your standard attacks and you have your special attack. But let's take a look at one of the big ones, the flying arrows. This is a special attack, and pretty much all the attacks works very similar. You have a grid where the X is where you are standing, and then everything in red is what you can affect potentially, depending on the type of weapon you're using. So in the case of the flying arrows, you get to damage all opponents in a line, and you roll the corresponding dice to figure out the damage. Now, if you kill your opponent, then you gain a kill token, which is going to be worth 3 points at the end of the game. And then stealing works a little bit different. However, you still have the grid. It shows where you're standing, and the red areas show what you're going to affect. Now, when you steal, the yellow dice is going to get rolled, and if it's a blank, then you're going to steal 1 item. But if it's a 1, you're going to steal 2 items. However, if it's a 2, you don't get to steal anything. And it's important to note that when you do steal, the only thing that's viable to steal is artifacts, gold, and diamonds. So there are lots of different types of weapons in this game, lots of ways to attack. However, those special weapons are unique because they really allow you to hit multiple targets at once. So keep an eye out for those and use them strategically for sure. But if you do die, you will just respawn. However, the player that killed you does get that kill token, giving them 3 points at the end of the game. But when you respawn, you're going to roll the respawn dice, and you'll end back up in one of the 5 spots. However, if you roll a 6, you get to pick which one of those 5 spots you end up at. And then you're back in the game, you'll continue your turn, and the nice thing is that you don't lose artifacts, you don't lose gold or diamonds, you hold on to your gear, which is pretty nice. However, there is an exception. If you're holding the Stone of Life, then you will drop the stone wherever your character was killed. Alright, so as we stated earlier, you can ransack room, and again, indicated by the icon will show which rooms are viable for that. You're going to draw from the ransack deck. Now, generally this deck is going to have diamonds or gold, giving you points at the end of the game. However, there can be monsters in this deck, which they will attack you. If you have reactionary cards, you can use them here as well. But if they attack you, and if they happen to kill you, then you will receive a death token. And this is the only time you get death tokens when you're attacked by a monster, not from other players. The death tokens are worth negative points at the end of the game. The nice thing though is that if they don't kill you, that card is going to go into your hand for you to use later in attacks against your opponents. So yes, in general, the death tokens are going to be received because of monsters, but if your actions result in your own death, like with the cherry bomb, then you will also receive a death token. And so how those monsters work in your hand is that they allow you to have an extra orange dice that you get to roll when you attack, or you can use them in defending and use that orange dice to reduce the amount of damage coming your way. Now, at the end of each round, you're going to take 3 direction dice and the dragon dice. You're going to roll them all to see what the dragon's going to do. You roll for direction and the dragon will move those spots, as well as if the dragon icon shows up on the dice, then the dragon will attack everybody within range. And range is adjacent to the dragon, including diagonal. So you're going to look at the power grid at the bottom of the board to see what he's going to attack with. And every time he lands an attack, his power goes up. He can fly, obviously, even in the dungeon, so walls and things don't really concern him. He's big anyway, right? So he also loops. So if he's on the edge of the board, he'll loop back around to the other side or the top or bottom. So he's a dangerous foe to be sure. You can use reactionary cards here, but he's also a monster. So if he does kill you, then you're going to receive a death token and have those negative points at the end of the game. Also at the end of the round, you'll draw back up to your hand limit, giving you extra cards to do different actions, to give you more weapons, give you more items, give you special abilities, or even giving you additional actions to perform. So these cards are crucial throughout the game and you will want to use them frequently. They also, again, have cards in there to use against your opponents to make them dazed and things of that nature. So those are the basics of the game, the things you'll be doing for the most part, but you have to get to phase 2. You need to level up. To go from level 1 to level 2, you need either 2 kills or 2 artifacts, and you'll level up immediately, increasing your health and giving you additional attack dice. But level 3 is really the key in order to get the Stone of Life. So moving to level 3 though, you need 5, but that can be any combination. You can do 3 kills and 2 artifacts or something of that nature. But once you do, then you have unlocked basically the second half of the game, allowing someone to grab the stone and get out. However, you don't have to get the stone. You could just have a ton of points and get out of the dungeon to trigger the game end. So now that someone has hit level 3, we trigger phase 2 of the game, and really all that means is that you're going to spawn the keys that can unlock the dragon's lair. You You're going to take the respawn dice and the yellow dice and roll them and spawn each of those keys in the artifact spots, the 1 through 8. And once you pick up one of those keys, they are worth points at the end of the game, so it's something to keep in mind as well. But once you unlock the Dragon's Lair and go after the Stone of Life, that Dragon's Lair remains unlocked. You can enter from any of the sides. It doesn't matter anymore at that point. And you can then try to make a beeline out of the dungeon, and there's only one spot to exit the dungeon from. Once you do, it triggers the game end. Every other player gets to finish one last turn, and then you total up points. And the hero with the most points is going to ultimately be the winner of the game. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, they also have a closed Facebook group that you can request to be part of if you want even more information, so check that out. And I know that they're working on creating specific player powers for the different characters and doing a lot of upgrades to the components. Now, this has that really neat video game style and play from those even like those old Zelda games and so forth, or those dungeon crawls, but it is a fair amount of take that, so keep that in mind. But ultimately, folks, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.